You ever wonder how the world ends? Is it a big, loud explosion? Or is it something quiet? For almost 30 years now, the 28 Days Later universe has been digging into that terrifying idea. So today, we're going to piece it all together, the entire timeline from the one lab where it all went wrong to the strange new world that crawled out of the ashes. Let's trace the complete history of the rage virus.
You know, you'd think it would be something massive, some huge cataclysm you can see coming. But in this world, it all starts with something so much smaller, almost invisible. A single drop of contaminated blood. The world ends not with a bang, but with a tiny mistake, born from scientific ambition and a really, really bad idea about how to cure human anger. And where did that mistake happen? Right in a university lab in Cambridge. So forget about zombies for a minute. Our story actually kicks off with two scientists, Warren and Clive. Their goal, well, you could almost say it was noble, but their methods and their own broken partnership were basically a perfect recipe for disaster.
Okay, so check this out, because this is the perfect storm of how everything went wrong. The goal? To create something that could inhibit rage. The method? Oh, just using the incredibly dangerous Ebola virus as a delivery system. But here's the crazy part. Their experiment was a catastrophic success. In just 2 weeks, the virus didn't stop rage. It mutated and amplified it 1,000 times over, creating this pure, unfiltered aggression. They didn't cure anger. They perfected it. And the final trigger? A guilt-ridden Clive anonymously tips off an animal rights group, and in doing so unleashes a biological weapon he couldn't have possibly imagined.
The speed of the collapse it's unbelievable. At 8:15 in the morning, a single activist sees this caged chimp and decides to free it, totally ignoring a scientist who's screaming at her not to. Seconds later, she's the first human victim. And this virus, it is hyper-infectious. Blood, saliva, any fluid. By noon, not even 4 hours later, carriers have already made it to London. A family is having a picnic, their son gets attacked, they throw him in an ambulance, and he spreads the virus all the way into the city. It was that fast.
So as this virus just tears through Great Britain, everything we take for granted, the government, the military, society itself, it just crumbles to dust. And in all that chaos, you have ordinary people being pushed to their absolute limits, having to make these impossible choices just to survive until morning.
In those first few weeks, the fall of an entire country is just written in these thousands of personal tragedies. You've got a woman, Selena, who has to kill her own husband with a machete moments after he's bitten. You have a guy named Don who makes the split-second horrifying choice to leave his wife behind to save his own skin. And then there's Jim, a bicycle courier who is, ironically, saved when a car hits him and puts him in a coma, basically shielding him while the world ends. By day 15, the government just gives up on rescue and switches to brutal containment. London is quarantined and the army, led by Major Henry West, just retreats. Mission failed.
And then just silence. 28 days go by and Jim wakes up. He walks out of that hospital into a London that is completely, profoundly empty. The streets are littered with trash. Old newspapers hint at the disaster he slept through, but there are no people, no cars, no sound. He's totally alone in the ruins of one of the biggest cities in the world with absolutely no idea what happened.
After this brutal journey, where he survives not just the infected, but the absolute worst of humanity, Jim, Selena, and a teenager named Hannah find this tiny glimmer of hope. They manage to signal a military jet, and as it flies over, Hannah asks this simple, fragile question: "Do you think he saw us this time?" And for the first time in a month, the answer is yes. So that single moment of hope, it actually sparks this massive international response. The original infected in Britain have all starved to death, so NATO, led by the US military, begins this incredibly ambitious and dangerous operation to reclaim the island. 6 months after the first outbreak, you have this fortress of hope standing on London's Isle of Dogs. They call it District 1. It's a heavily armed safe zone, a tiny slice of civilization in a dead country. British citizens are being brought back from all over the world, including a familiar face, Don, the guy who abandoned his wife. He's there with his 2 kids, who were safely away in Spain when it all fell apart. And then the impossible happens. Don's wife, Alice, she's found alive. She somehow survived the hordes. But she's not just a survivor. She's what they call an asymptomatic carrier of the rage virus. Her body has the infection, but she's not affected by it. Her blood holds the key to a vaccine, the one thing that could save everyone.
I mean, think about it. They have the cure. Humanity's salvation is right there, in their grasp. But our own human failings are always our downfall, aren't they? Don is just destroyed by guilt, so he sneaks into Alice's quarantine room. He begs her to forgive him, she does, and they kiss. But an asymptomatic carrier is still a carrier. The virus transmits instantly, and in that one single moment of human connection, Dawn unleashes a second, even more terrifying outbreak right in the heart of humanity's last hope.
The military's response is immediate, and it is horrifyingly brutal. They saw how fast London fell the first time, so there's no hesitation. The order comes down, code red. All other plans are out the window. Snipers are ordered to shoot everything that moves. Doesn't matter if they're infected or not. The safe zone becomes a slaughterhouse, and it all ends with them firebombing the entire district. It's this tragic, cruel decision, but it was made with the terrible knowledge that the virus had already, somehow, made it to Paris.
All right, let's fast forward, and I mean way forward. 28 years. That second outbreak was contained, but the world is never going to be the same. On the isolated island of Great Britain, civilization didn't completely die out. It mutated. It evolved into these strange, new, and often terrifying forms.
And this slide just perfectly shows the two extremes of where humanity went. On one hand, you've got the island of Lindisfarne. It's a stable community, protected by the tides, they have farming, schools, they're focused on rebuilding. And on the other hand, pure madness. A cult led by a guy who calls himself Sir Lord Jimmy Crystal, whose followers are all named Jimmy and live by these twisted rituals based on old kids' TV shows. It is literally order versus chaos.
But here's the thing. Humanity wasn't the only thing that evolved. The virus did too. The infected learned not to just burn themselves out and starve to death. And from this new generation, a new terror emerged, the alphas. They're pack leaders, bigger, stronger, faster, and terrifyingly smarter. This is a total game changer. The old rules of just outlasting the mindless infected, they don't apply anymore. These things think, they hunt, and they are so much harder to kill.
But even in this brutal new world, the search for a cure is still going. There's this former doctor, Kelson, who lives alone in this massive structure he built entirely from human skeletons. He calls it the Bone Temple. He starts testing on a local alpha he named Samson and makes this incredible discovery. When Samson is sedated, he can understand language. Kelson starts to think the rage virus isn't a degenerative disease, it's a form of treatable psychosis. Hope, literally buried in a temple made of bone.
So, after nearly 3 decades of darkness, all these separate threads of the story are finally about to weave together. The survivors from the very beginning are about to run into the kids who have only ever known this ruined world, and it's all setting the stage for one last epic confrontation.
And now we come to what might be the biggest reveal in this entire timeline. In a quiet, remote cottage, the same one from all those years ago, a teenage girl is studying. And her tutor? It's Jim. The same Jim from day 28. He's alive, and he has a daughter.
Their quiet life gets interrupted by noises outside. They see 2 young kids, Spike and Kelly, the last survivors of that crazy Jimmy's cult, running for their lives from a pack of infected. Sam, Jim's daughter, turns to him and asks if they should help. And after everything he has seen, everything he has done and lost, his answer is immediate. Of course we...
So that's where we are. The past and the present have finally crashed into each other. Dr. Kelson's research offers this tiny glimmer of hope for a cure, but they're up against an enemy that has grown smarter and stronger in a world that might just be too broken, too traumatized to ever really heal. Which leaves us with the ultimate question. After so much rage, is there any coming back from it?